Here you go. Stay safe out here.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a good day.
It was just another ordinary morning in the busy city, but for one little girl, nothing about this day would turn out ordinary. She was a poor little black girl, no older than 7, walking along the crowded streets on her way home from school. Her shoes were old, slightly torn at the edges, and her school bag hung loosely over her small shoulders. Despite the rough day-to-day life she had experienced, her eyes were wide and full of curiosity. She had a way of noticing things that most adults overlooked, the way the wind whispered through the trees, the subtle sounds of people moving quickly past her, and the faint glint of sunlight bouncing off car windows. Today, however, she noticed something unusual, something that made her stop for a moment, squinting at the street ahead. The city was alive, as always, with the familiar sounds of honking cars, people shouting to one another, street vendors calling out prices, and the occasional laughter of children playing nearby. It was a normal scene for anyone walking through, but this little girl had a way of seeing the small details. She noticed a black luxury car slowly pulling up to the curb. Its paint was glossy, reflecting the sun in a way that caught the attention of almost everyone around, but to her, it wasn't the shine that was interesting, it was the movement she saw nearby. The billionaire who owned the car stepped out. He was famous in the city, known for his wealth and the way he carried himself, always in a suit, always calm, always in control. Most people would have seen him and gone about their business, maybe whispering his name to a friend or taking a quick picture. But the little girl wasn't focused on his fame. She was focused on something else, something that made her stomach twist and her heart beat a little faster. There was a shadow moving strangely close to the car, a figure that seemed out of place. Her instincts, sharp even at her young age, told her that something was wrong. She had learned to trust these feelings, even when others laughed at her or called her overly cautious. Today, that instinct was screaming at her to pay attention. She slowed her pace and watched carefully, noticing the figure's eyes scanning the area, the way they moved silently and deliberately, almost as if they were waiting for the right moment. Most adults would have missed it, distracted by the bright city or the shiny car, but she saw it immediately. For a moment, she felt a rush of fear, but it was quickly replaced by determination. She didn't know exactly what was happening, but she knew she couldn't stay silent. She remembered stories her mother had told her about listening to your gut, about speaking up when you saw something dangerous, no matter how small or powerless you felt. She had never imagined she would have to act on those lessons so soon. As the billionaire adjusted his watch and leaned toward his car, unaware of the danger, the little girl's mind raced. She looked around, noticing a few people watching from across the street, their expressions curious but distracted. She realized that no one else seemed to notice the danger lurking so close. For a second, she felt small, almost invisible among the crowd and the giant city buildings towering above her. But then she remembered something important. Courage isn't about being big, it's about doing the right thing, no matter how small you feel. Her heart pounded, but she took a deep breath, preparing herself for what she knew she had to do. She might be just a little girl, and he might be one of the richest men in the city, but she had seen something no one else had. She couldn't wait for someone else to notice, she had to act. This ordinary day, with its ordinary streets and ordinary people, was about to change in a way no one could have predicted, all because one little girl decided to trust her instincts and pay attention to the small signs that mattered. Even as she walked a few steps closer to the car, her mind was sharp and focused. She watched the figure's movements carefully, noting every shift, every glance. She knew she had to stay calm, even though her body was buzzing with nervous energy. Every second counted, and the city around her seemed to slow just a little as she prepared to speak out. This was the start of something extraordinary, something that would show that bravery can come from the smallest and most unexpected places, even from a little poor girl walking home on a regular city street. In that moment, she didn't know the impact she would have. She didn't know how her actions would ripple across the crowd, across the city, and eventually across the world. But she did know one thing: she couldn't ignore what she saw. She had to act, and whatever happened next, she was ready to face it, because sometimes, the smallest voice can make the biggest difference, and today, her voice was about to be heard. The little girl's heart was still racing from what she had just noticed. She could feel the tension building in the air, even if no one else seemed to sense it yet. The black luxury car gleamed under the morning sun, and the billionaire leaned casually against it, completely unaware of the quiet danger that was unfolding right next to him. Her small hands clenched into fists, and her eyes narrowed as she tried to make sense of everything. She knew she couldn't just walk away. Something inside her screamed that she had to act, and fast. She took a deep breath, gathering all the courage she had. Her voice, small but strong, cut through the noise of the busy city street as she shouted, "Don't get in the vehicle." At first, it sounded like just another child yelling in the crowd, but the urgency in her tone made people pause. Pedestrians stopped mid-step, car horns faded into the background, and heads turned to see what was happening. The billionaire froze, startled by the unexpected command. He looked around, confused, trying to locate the source of the shout. Most adults would have ignored a child yelling at them, thinking it was nothing important. But there was something in the little girl's eyes, something raw, fearless, and determined, that made him hesitate. She wasn't just a child. She was someone who had seen, understood, and acted in a moment that could change everything. The girl stepped forward, not caring about the stares from the growing crowd. Her voice grew louder, more insistent. "Don't get in. You have to stay out." People began murmuring among themselves, some pulling out their phones to record the scene, while others whispered, wondering why a young girl would dare shout at one of the richest men in the city. Yet no one could ignore the courage radiating from her small frame. As the billionaire glanced at her, something clicked in his mind. He noticed her eyes, wide with urgency and focus. There was no fear in them that would stop her from speaking the truth. There was only the determination of someone who knew something others did not. The street seemed to hold its breath as he slowly stepped back from the car, trying to understand what the child had seen. The little girl's instincts didn't fail her. She had spotted a shadow lurking near the vehicle, a person moving carefully, deliberately, trying not to be noticed. Most adults, distracted by the city's chaos or the billionaire's flashy presence, would have missed it entirely. But she had seen it, and she refused to stay silent. She understood something very important. Courage isn't about size, power, or money. It's about speaking up when it matters the most. A few bystanders finally began to approach, sensing the tension. Their phones were out, cameras recording, but no one dared get too close. They were unsure whether it was safe. The little girl didn't notice the growing attention around her. Her focus was entirely on the billionaire and the danger she had seen. Every second felt critical. She kept shouting, repeating her warning, making sure he heard her clearly. The billionaire's initial surprise gave way to caution. He looked around the street, his eyes scanning for any signs of trouble. He realized that this wasn't just a random interruption. This little girl had seen something important, and her urgency was justified. He took a careful step away from the car, glancing back at the child who had had the bravery to shout louder than all the noise of the city combined. In that moment, something remarkable happened. The ordinary morning, which had begun like any other, transformed into a powerful lesson in courage. Everyone watching, whether they admitted it or not, felt the impact of her bravery. It was a reminder that even the smallest voices can matter, that sometimes those who appear powerless can change the course of events with nothing more than their courage and clarity. The little girl didn't stop. She continued to warn him, repeating the same words, her tone calm but insistent. The street was now fully aware of her presence, and the mysterious shadow lurking nearby seemed to pause, as if realizing that its plan had been noticed. The tension in the air was nearly unbearable, and yet the little girl stood her ground, unwavering. For the first time that day, the billionaire truly understood the gravity of the moment. He was facing a danger he hadn't even realized existed, and it had taken the courage of a 7-year-old girl to make him aware. The city around them faded into a blur. All that mattered was the warning, the threat, and the brave little girl who refused to be ignored. This was the moment that would define the day, the moment when one small voice had the power to stop a potential disaster. The ordinary morning was now extraordinary, and the little girl's bravery was the spark that lit the entire story. No one would forget this moment anytime soon. The crowd around them had grown, curiosity mixing with a sense of unease. People whispered to one another, trying to figure out what had just happened. Some were confused why a little girl would yell at one of the city's most famous billionaires. Others were tense, their eyes scanning the area as if expecting something dangerous to appear. Yet no one had fully realized the gravity of the situation, except the girl. She stood a few feet away from the car, small but unshakable, her eyes fixed on the shadow that had caught her attention earlier. It moved with quiet precision, almost invisible to anyone else, blending into the background of the busy street. Most adults, distracted by traffic, the bright city lights, or the billionaire's presence, would have completely missed it. But she hadn't. Her young mind had processed every detail, the slight hesitation in the figure's movements, the way their gaze flicked toward the car and then away, the unusual way they carried themselves. It was enough to tell her that something wasn't right. The billionaire, now fully aware of her warning, took a cautious step back. His luxurious suit and confident demeanor contrasted sharply with the girl's small, determined figure. But in that moment, he understood that appearances didn't matter. The real power was in awareness, vigilance, and courage, and the girl had all three. His eyes scanned the street, following her gaze, and suddenly, he saw it. A figure lurking just beyond the crowd, partially hidden near the corner of the building. A chill ran down his spine. This wasn't a random stranger, this was someone watching, waiting, and possibly planning something dangerous. The tension grew thick. Bystanders held their breath, their curiosity now mixed with concern. The little girl didn't flinch, she knew the danger was real. She stepped slightly forward, pointing toward the shadow. "Look. There," she said, her voice trembling only slightly, but still clear and commanding. "He's going to do something." Some of the people nearby finally began to pay attention. Phones were raised to record, but no one dared approach the figure. They could feel the invisible weight of the moment, a sense that something serious was about to unfold. The billionaire's face showed a mixture of shock and gratitude. He realized that without the girl's warning, he might never have seen the threat in time. He wanted to act, but he also knew that moving too quickly could put him in danger. The figure lurking near the car suddenly made a small, deliberate step forward, and the little girl's instincts screamed at her. She knew this was it, the moment when her warning could prevent a disaster. She raised her voice again, louder this time, cutting through the city noise. "Don't go. Stop now." Her words rang like a bell, sharp and urgent. Something shifted. The figure hesitated, clearly startled by the girl's fearless voice. It was as if her courage had disrupted whatever plan they had been preparing. The billionaire, now fully aware of the potential danger, slowly moved behind his car, using it as cover. He realized how vulnerable he had been just moments ago and how crucial the girl's warning had been. The crowd, now fully engaged, began to whisper rapidly. "Did you see that?" someone said. "She saved him." Another added, "A little girl stopped something bad from happening." Cameras captured every second of the scene, phones recording her bravery and the growing tension. The little girl, though small and poor, had become the center of attention for the first time in her life. Her voice, sharp and clear, had drawn the eyes of an entire street, and more importantly, had revealed the danger no adult had noticed. In that moment, the ordinary morning had transformed completely. What had begun as a routine walk home from school had become a real-life drama filled with suspense, courage, and quick thinking. The little girl's bravery had turned her into a hero, at least for that street, and possibly for much more if the story spread beyond the city. The figure, realizing they had been seen, froze completely. The tension in the air was almost unbearable, as if the entire city had paused to watch the next move. And all the while, the girl stood there, unwavering, her eyes locked on the threat, ready to act again if necessary. Her courage had unveiled the danger that no one else had seen, and it was clear to everyone watching that she was the reason disaster had been avoided, at least for now. The billionaire finally stepped fully back from his luxury car, his eyes still fixed on the little girl who had shouted at him moments ago. His usually confident demeanor was gone, replaced by a mixture of shock, awe, and a sudden understanding of the danger he had been in. Every muscle in his body tensed as he realized how close he had come to a potential threat, and how a child, so small, so unassuming, had just saved him without even knowing the full consequences. He looked down at the girl. Her eyes were wide, determined, and unwavering. Despite her small size, her presence was commanding. He noticed the way she had pointed, shouted, and refused to back down. She wasn't just a child yelling at a stranger. She was someone who had seen clearly when everyone else had ignored the signs. Her bravery, her instinct, and her courage were overwhelming. For the first time, he saw power not in wealth, not in influence, but in awareness and fearlessness. The crowd around them held its breath. Some whispered in disbelief, others recorded the moment on their phones. Everyone could feel the tension in the air, the sense that something extraordinary was happening. The billionaire's mind raced as he processed everything. He remembered the shadow he had only just noticed, the figure that had lurked close enough to pose real danger. Without the girl's warning, he might never have seen it. The thought sent a chill down his spine. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm but firm, and carried across the street. "Thank you," he said, looking directly at her. You just saved me." The words seemed almost inadequate for the magnitude of the moment, but they were heartfelt. The little girl blinked, surprised that the rich, powerful man had acknowledged her so directly. She hadn't expected gratitude. She had only acted on instinct. Yet, hearing his words, she felt a strange warmth, a quiet sense of pride and validation. The billionaire took another careful glance around. His mind had shifted from confusion to focus. He now fully understood what the little girl had seen and why she had shouted so loudly. He was shaken but impressed. He realized that in all his years of experience, in all the precautions he had taken, no one had alerted him to danger as clearly as this child had. Her courage had given him a second chance, a moment to step back and avoid a situation that could have ended badly. The shadow that had lingered near the vehicle was now retreating, perhaps realizing that the billionaire was no longer vulnerable, or perhaps unnerved by the attention the girl had drawn. Either way, the threat had been neutralized, at least for the moment. And the billionaire knew that he owed this outcome entirely to her. He knelt slightly to be closer to her level, trying to show respect and sincerity. "You're incredibly brave," he said, his tone softer now. "Most people wouldn't have dared to speak up like that. You have a gift, a sense that something is wrong, and you acted on it. That's rare." The little girl's eyes sparkled, partly from pride and partly from relief. She had done what she had to do, and now someone who usually seemed untouchable was recognizing her courage. People in the crowd began to murmur in admiration. "Did you see that?" one whispered. "A little girl just saved a billionaire." Another said, "I've never seen anything like this before. She was fearless." Cameras clicked, phones recorded, and social media would soon be flooded with images and videos of the extraordinary moment. The little girl, once unnoticed in the rush of city life, had become the center of attention. For the billionaire, the moment was transformative. He realized that wealth and power could never replace awareness, instincts, and courage. He had been reminded that the world was unpredictable, and that sometimes, those who seem small and powerless could be the ones who make the biggest difference. His gratitude was profound, and he felt a responsibility to honor the child's bravery, though he didn't yet know how. In the midst of the street's chaos, the billionaire finally allowed himself a small smile. It was a smile not of pride, but of relief and admiration. He had been saved by a little girl, and it was a humbling, unforgettable experience. The ordinary day had transformed into an extraordinary story, and the little girl's bravery would be remembered far beyond this street corner. She had faced danger with nothing but her voice, her instincts, and her courage, and she had triumphed. The little girl stood on the busy street, her small frame now the center of attention. The billionaire, still visibly shaken, looked at her with a mix of admiration, gratitude, and disbelief. Around them, the crowd buzzed with whispers, phones raised to capture every second, and people pointing, talking about the courage they had just witnessed. But the girl didn't notice the attention, the cameras, or the murmurs. She was focused on something far more important, the feeling that she had done the right thing. News of what had happened began to spread almost immediately. Passers-by who had witnessed the event began sharing videos and telling friends. Within hours, the story was on social media, capturing the hearts and imaginations of thousands, then millions. Headlines began to appear: "Little girl saves billionaire with brave warning," and "Courage has no size, young hero alerts wealthy man to danger." The little girl's actions became a symbol, a reminder that bravery doesn't come from wealth, status, or experience. It comes from awareness, courage, and the willingness to act. The billionaire, touched by the event, realized that her bravery deserved more than just his private thanks. He knew he had been saved, and he knew that her actions were an example to the world. He decided to do something that would honor her courage, reaching out to support initiatives for children in underprivileged communities. He wanted other kids like her, observant, brave, and determined, to have opportunities to learn, grow, and be heard. The girl's single act of courage had inspired change on a level that no one could have predicted. Even after the immediate danger had passed, the little girl continued to inspire those around her. Teachers, neighbors, and friends spoke about her bravery, sharing stories of how she had always been observant and attentive, noticing details that others overlooked. They said it was her careful attention, combined with courage, that had made the difference. The girl had proven that even the smallest voice, when used wisely, could influence the world in ways that seemed impossible. The billionaire invited her family to meet him privately, and while he couldn't erase the challenges the girl faced every day, he offered support that could change her life. Scholarships, mentorship opportunities, and access to safer neighborhoods were now possibilities for her and other children in her community. Her single act of bravery had opened doors, not just for her, but for others who shared her struggles. It was a ripple effect, a reminder that courage can inspire hope and create opportunities far beyond the immediate moment. People across the city, and soon the world, shared the story widely. It became a symbol of courage and quick thinking, inspiring adults and children alike. Social media was flooded with messages praising the little girl, sharing videos of her bravery, and encouraging others to act courageously in moments that mattered. Educators and leaders spoke about her as an example in lessons about awareness, responsibility, and moral courage. She was no longer just a girl walking home from school, she was a hero whose story would be told for years to come. Even the billionaire, known for his wealth, influence, and power, admitted publicly that he had learned something invaluable from the girl. He shared in interviews that bravery, observation, and quick action could be more powerful than money or status. He emphasized how children, even the youngest among us, can have an extraordinary impact if they trust their instincts and speak up. The little girl had taught the world a lesson that no fortune could buy. Back on the street where it all began, life slowly returned to normal. Cars passed, people hurried along, and the city continued its usual rhythm. But the moment had left a mark that would not fade. The little girl's courage had changed not just the billionaire's life, but the perspective of everyone who witnessed or heard the story. Her bravery had become a beacon, a reminder that true heroism can come from unexpected places, and that sometimes, one small voice is all it takes to make a life-saving difference. And so, what began as a normal day, an ordinary walk home from school, became a story of hope, inspiration, and lasting impact. The little girl had reminded the world that courage is timeless, fearless, and often hidden in the most unlikely people. Her actions would continue to inspire others, encouraging everyone to pay attention, speak up, and act bravely, because sometimes, one small voice is enough to change everything.